and a bag full of cassette tapes. And well, let's put something on. There's only one occasion when my pilot put his foot down, and it was he really didn't want to listen to The Doors, which I thought, well, what's wrong with listening to the end? I think it's quite a good song. She said, can we change the tape, please, Adam? Yeah, I'll listen to it later. So, on the easy ones, that was fine. On the one to Baghdad, where there were umpteen overlapping MEZs, we barely said a word to each other. Barely said a word, apart from, obviously, what you need to do to fly the aircraft. But we were just so concentrating on what the job was in hand, not wanting to miss anything on the radio, but also just within our own thoughts of what could go wrong. So, you can tell. And that's flying, to be honest. You can be having the biggest banter and somebody will come up on the radio or something will happen. You'll hear a noise or whatever, and the crew just utterly stop. The banter just stops, and it's, what do we need to do? So, it's just the way it is in flying, but it was very noticeable.
A MEZ is a missile engagement zone, right?
Yes.
And so Baghdad was known as a super MEZ in itself. It had all these things. So would you, how would you handle that then? You fly, you try and sort of thread the needle through, or you just sort of skirt the edges of it?
Yeah, well, it depends on where you're going. Yeah, you try to skirt the edge, or try to find the least overlap, as you say, thread the needle. Whatever you needed to do to get to the target as safely as you could and out again. And considering that you're going to fly out a different way to the way you came in, just because that's good practice. You also trust that you're going to have SEAD support from the Americans. And there were occasions where, certainly at night, there was some great flash come down. And what the fuck? Pressing away on the chaff button, somebody's shooting at me. And then you hear Winchester, because it was a Weasel F4 shooting a harm down. And yeah, thanks, fellas. You could have perhaps called earlier, because I've just taken 5 years off my life, and I might need to change myself when I get back. So you knew that they were on the tasking order. You knew that they were on the radio, but by and large, you couldn't see them until things like that happened. And they think, oh, they're actually quite a bit closer than I thought. So it was sort of reassuring to know that was happening, and to know that you did have a full package support. And there were certain American squadrons of the SEAD guys, the EF-111s and whoever, who actively wanted to escort us there. Because I think they just enjoyed doing it. They liked to work with a group of people. So we used to get calls to say, where are you going tonight? Can we escort you? Which is
brilliant.
great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You've mentioned LGBs, which in today's climate could mean a completely different thing to what we're talking about. But
that's true.
So laser guided bombs, LGBs. What was the journey then to being able to put one of those on a target?
The journey was very fast and very steep. We, as I said, the first time I saw a laser guided bomb was when it was on the bottom of the aircraft, or the three of them were on the bottom of the aircraft that I was about to go and drop. Never seen them before. We'd spoken about them. We'd never trained with them. It was a complete evolution of tactics that we hadn't anticipated at the beginning, but became necessary. And so we flew with three bombs on each aircraft on a four ship. We'd meet the usually two Buccaneers flying out of Bahrain. And Bahrain and Dhahran are 20, 30 miles apart. So it was very easy to facilitate a join up. We'd then fly in loose formation with them, do some tanking as if we were one formation, fly to the target. They would spike and we would just drop. And to be honest, you're just looking to be in the right area of sky to drop as a bomb carrier, to just drop the bombs. And then the Buccaneers, they with the spike, they take the radiating the emissions block onto the target. I think there was a misconception that LGBs were more successful than they were. We probably had a 50% success rate. Some of them failed to guide because probably we were in the wrong piece of sky. Some of them didn't hit the target because they'd run out of energy. If you drop them too soon and they don't get the basket till late, they're doing their best to get to the center line, and they've just completely run out of energy and dropped short. So probably because we were less experienced, we didn't have the best success rate, but it was okay, And we had some great successes, as I said, oil refinery, That was just phenomenal watching the bomb going into that. I mean, I shouldn't smile because people undoubtedly died with it happening, but I just think it was just the most spectacular thing I'd ever witnessed in my life at that stage. We also had a lot of weather scrubs. Get to the target, complete cloud cover, bring the bombs home. So, it was okay, but it wasn't the most spectacularly successful period of bombing, I would say.
So the the technicalities behind that then are they've got a pod I think called Pave Spike, right? And so that looks at the thermal properties of whatever it's looking at, something on the ground, whatever, and that's how it differentiates between sort of the ground and the object it's looking at. Pave Spike pod as it lasers the target. And so did you you said it was steep and sort of fast, that journey. Had they done a lot of testing? Had they done any testing back in the UK, or were you doing this sort of operational testing evaluation there in the desert?
No, I mean, this was not new for tornadoes. The Ladbrokes force had, I think, 15 and 16 Squadron had an LGB commitment. So they knew how to do it. But it was one of those things, it was like tanking. The Germany squadrons didn't do tanking before the first Gulf War because that was only a need for the UK-based squadron. But then everybody had to do it and everybody had to learn. So undoubtedly the 15 and the 16 squadron crews, if those were the crews that were committed to NATO with LGBs, they undoubtedly were far more successful than we were. But we were very much learning on. So there was nothing new about tornadoes carrying LGBs and dropping LGBs from the tornado. Although I think the Ladbrokes squadrons, their experience of spiking, of designating, was probably from ground troops rather than from aircraft, but they probably did a mixture of both, to be perfectly honest. But we'd never, certainly our squadron, the people who were on that detachment had not seen LGBs.
I'll share it with you, but I found an interview with you. It was like BBC Midlands or something out at Dhahran.
Is that the one with my mum and dad on it?
No.
Because my mum and dad got interviewed by BBC Midlands as well.
Did they? They might be. I watched it's just on YouTube. I was just looking through material and I thought, that guy looks familiar, and sure enough, it's you. But you're talking about sort of not enjoying being. I think you say you joined up to fly, not to get shot at. But this is before you come home. So how long did you spend out there, and what are your overall recollections of the experience?
I didn't spend. I suppose I spent one of the shortest amount of times for any other cruise there, because like I said, we flew out on the 3rd of January, and I think I flew home on the 18th of March. So yeah, the ceasefire was 28th of February, something like that. So 2.5 weeks after the ceasefire, we flew home. So what's that? 10 weeks, something like that. Yeah, 10, 11 weeks. Not long. Some people spent up to 6 months there. On detachments. So, it was fairly short, but it was an intense short. It was massively intense, going to war for the first time with your squadron, with the guys that were your mates. And as I said, because we were Germany, we tended to be that much closer, lived in each other's pockets, if not in the MEZ. Going around to people's houses on the married patch on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday lunch, the usual round of whatever. And so, doing all that with your mates, something that you trained with, losing a couple of people, the emotion, or a couple of aircraft, the emotions that go with that, and then going home back to Germany, it was a real mix of emotions.
If you enjoyed this clip and want more, you can go to 10percenttrue.com, hit subscribe, you get early ad-free access to all my content. Appreciate your support.